time this morning in imagivate.live.com. This is I was telling Hassan this morning was a little crazy. I took a beloved person in my life to the airport this morning and barely made it back here. I didn't realize how off kilter all of the technology was. Wasn't expecting that, but those things happen, and that's the fun and magic of the internet and Twitch particularly. And that's, as I get smoother and smoother and tighter with like how this is all working, I don't want to lose the excitement and fun and unexpected nature of what Imagivate Live was meant to be in the first place. So we'll work out those kinks, and if we don't work them out, it's part of the fun. It's part of the free admission that you're paying nothing to experience. So you're welcome. All right, let's get back over to my good pal Hassan S. Ali for a longer, more terrible conversation. Hey again, Hassan.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Hi,
Hello.
internet. Hi, pixels. Hi, pixel waves of the internet and humans. I hope everyone is doing well and hanging in there and doing their best, trying their best today. That's all I have to say to start things off.
You are a very positive person, Hassan,
Yeah.
and it's refreshing, and I would say it's sometimes arresting and maybe even a little confusing, because I think knowing how smart and talented you are, knowing all of the really cool things you've gotten to do, I think every time I see a post from you or something, I'm expecting this kind of edge of snark, or this sort of I don't know, wink and nod and a little bit of sarcasm or a little bit of crassness. And you are very genuinely you're very genuinely interested in positive connections with people. I mean, and that's not to say that you aren't being funny, you aren't coming up with really clever and interesting things, but I think that you unlike a lot of your contemporaries, I don't think you've got that sort of salty edge, that sort of postmodern kind of crassness. What is that something that you have to work on really hard? Are you medicated? What are the things that would keep you in this space of being like a positive, uplifting dude?
Well, I mean, I think first of all, I want to set the expectation with everybody that a person it cannot be positive all the time. Like this, it's I have my non-positive moments too. But what I love to share stuff out to the world, I put that stuff in my journal, and I put that stuff in my calls to my parents and my friends. But the positive stuff that I love to share with people are really a product of I want to entertain with heart. That's a humor with heart is my like personal compass. Is humor with heart. And whenever I'm putting something out there, it's about will someone. Richard Branson is a great inspiration for me. He's
Okay.
like, will my mom enjoy this? That's what he says for everything he does in life. He is businesses. He's like, would my mom approve of this? Which he thinks this is me. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So that is a very similar thing. Is that if I'm doing something, even if it's a weird idea that my mom might not get because she's not on Twitch or she's not on she's not the most modern platform. Is it something that when she hears about it, she'll say like, you know what, that's kind of mean, son. Or is it something that eventually she's just like, yeah, I like that. So I think people need. I want to add value, and I think everyone, whether you're in a business or whether you're starting your own business, whether you're doing your own side hustle, your own side gig, adding value is like the goal. And so what value and my value that I'm trying to add to other people is yes, a laugh, but also something maybe a little bit to pep up people's day.
Yeah, that's nice. Take us back. Take us back to young Hassan. What were your sort of creative ambitions? And then how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, I mean, I took a like I studied economics in high school, in college, and I somehow ended up in the creative world. But the thing that did it for me is so someone gave me a camcorder, and I loved tooling around with telling stories in video format. And so video was my first love, and telling stories via the the motion moving picture was very interesting to me. And I found that I just gravitated towards comedy as the genre of things to be able to tell stories of. And the first thing that started it, if you really want to go back for me personally, what ended up me doing funny stuff for The Onion and for the stuff we're doing at Potbelly and various other random things is I took a very boring wedding video and I re-edited it and made it funny. It was a family wedding video, and this was in high school. This is in high school, so this is before college even. This is in high school, and I took a very boring. No one wanted to watch it. It was like a wedding video that you take and you have it, and it's like, all right, we paid that videographer whatever for it. Let's put it on the shelf. And I just re-edited it for. I don't even know if YouTube was a thing. I re-edited it on a Sony like Vio desktop computer, and made it a 10-minute thing where there's drama in it, sound effects in it, and all that stuff. So,
which is potentially a terrible idea, right?
yeah,
Because that was somebody's precious moment. Whose wedding was it, by the way?
this is my like second cousin.
Okay,
Like,
so you had a
the
little bit of
cousin twice removed.
separation.
Yeah, right,
Yeah,
right, right.
that's good.
But I made that's the fun that I had because I that's what I did in my spare time in high school. But I really enjoyed that, and so I joined the film club. Got I think any passion that a person has, it's good to foster it with other people too. So whether we're in a virtual world right now, there's still communities to be able to connect and share ideas and share stories of, hey, what worked for you? What are you doing? What are you working on? I got that kind of group support through film club. While not everyone was doing comedy, they were doing other genres and stuff like that. We talked about, hey, why are you still using this kind of camera? There's this new stuff coming out. And hey, have you heard about this tutorial on how to edit, well, how to cut dialogue? And I'm like, oh, okay, there's something called a 180 rule in filmmaking that I learned about while talking in this film club. So whatever it is, I think it starts small as a kernel of an idea, and if it hooks someone, then the next step I would encourage people to do is find a group of like-minded people who are doing the same thing in the same journey and connect with them and start sharing, trading ideas, and eventually that's how you see a lot of people on on these shows like Seinfeld. They're like, yeah, I lived with, or Conan O'Brien. He's like, yeah, I lived with Bob Odenkirk. We were like we were roommates in Chicago, and we were studying Second City, and like you end up knowing each other when you're doing your own thing later in life.
Yeah, that's cool. What do you do though when like some of those people are just real jerks? How do you? Because not everybody will get down with that groove, right? And especially in a super competitive creative world, and whether you're in a creative agency or you're in a creative client role or you're just trying to come up with creative ideas at any at any business. When you have folks that maybe aren't quite simpatico, aren't wired the same way, what's your remedy for that? Or do you just have to kind of just cut them loose and hope for the best?
Well, it depends. I think it depends on if someone is really at a level of toxicity of really being a negative person in your life, then yeah, you have to create either some kind of a boundary or some kind of separation, because the last thing you want to do is let someone suck your energy and suck that your vitality in life out. And I think that I mean, I was trying. I think that there are ways to go about it where, as long as you keep your head down and focus yourself with the people that are supporting you and are helping you, that's what I would recommend. But I guess my non-answer to that question is it depends on the relationship. If it's someone, if it's like a literally in your job and it's someone like that, then I would recommend talking to like an HR type of person
Yeah.
to talk about like this is, but put it in the context of like this is stopping me from doing the company's objective.
Right.
This is not, it's not like, oh, this person is grading at me. It could be that all, but the thing that I've learned that it really helps is what is the higher purpose that this person is keeping me from. It's keeping me from doing the thing that the organization is wanting me to do.
Yeah.
I'll give an example
Okay.
of something that I had to cut loose because, and it wasn't toxic even necessarily. It was just I was running this humor publication on Medium that I'd started, which is something that I'm so passionate about, but it was taking so much time away from my career doing writing, like just basic writing stuff. I wasn't able to run the publication and write and do my career. And so I had to, it wasn't a toxic project, but it was something that was sucking kind of the life out of me to do other things that I really valued. So I cut it loose and I said, I gave it to someone else who really was jonesing for taking it over. And yes, it was hard to let go of someone, just like if you're parting with a friend who you're like, you know what, we're not really friends anymore, or we're not really uh, doing the same stuff or same interests anymore. But at the same time, it was very liberating for me to focus and double down on writing and my career at Potbelly, for instance. So I do think nothing is it's not going to be comfortable, but I think it helps in the greater good to be able to do that stuff. And now someone is running it, they're doing their thing with it and enjoying it, and I'm from the sidelines so proud of seeing that happen. But I've let go of that.
That's awesome. It's a hard thing to do, isn't it? Especially if it's something that you helped birth into the world to be able to walk away or hand it over to other stewards. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. We've had a couple of terrible ideas come through that I want to recognize. You inspiring the Imagivators as we are talking. Shepherd Josh was like, "Hey, going back to the wedding video, hire people to actually create a short film based on your wedding, and you get to pick the genre, and then just like coming in and pouring like a bucket of mop water all over it, Thoughtworth said, can my wedding video be in the genre of Human Centipede? Yes. So those are terrible ideas that are just they're ejecta in our stream chat. That's what happens here, Hassan. You should know that any conversation can spur a terrible idea. And that kind of leads me to my next question. When you and I were kind of reuniting around this opportunity, you said, hey, I do this kind of bad idea workshopping or exercises with my team all the time. What is your approach to getting good ideas from bad ideas, and what are some of the most terrible ideas you've heard come through the transom on your end?
Well, were those like the Human Centipede idea? Was that something that was just chatted right now as we're talking,
That was
or was
in the
that
chat.
from? Oh, okay, cool. Because there's something about the reason why I asked that is because, first of all, not opposed to a Human Centipede recut of a wedding.
Okay. So
that would just be very
maybe not as terrible of an idea as I thought.
Yeah. but there is something to, there's a reason why I think personally terrible ideas exist. I should also say I'm the product of two psychiatrist parents, so this might take a little tangent for a second.
Okay.
So I think that terrible ideas are needed because we all have a suppressed id that Carl Jung talked about, or Freud talked about. Is the id is like those repressed things that society does not want us to say. They're the shameful things that are in us. They're the things about like, no, I don't want to go to work today. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that.
I talked a lot about Ryan Gosling. I think my id was starting to squirt out in the stream yesterday, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
So I get it. I get it.
Yeah. And so those are the things that bad idea sessions, like the first stuff that people are putting in the chat, your awesome fans are putting in the chat, are those things that they seem like random synapses firing, but they are, if you think about it, sometimes maybe there is just part of like an id inside you that is just like, yeah, this is, I wouldn't bring this up to my boss, this this recut, or I wouldn't bring it up to a video client, a wedding video client. I'm going to recut your video into a human centipede like thing, right? But I think you need to purge those uh, terrible ideas or bad ideas and get them out in the open to clear the id, because once the id feels heard and once that part of you and those that stuff feels heard, you can actually, your brain, for me, but I've heard other people do this. Dan Brown, the author of Da Vinci Code, talks about this a lot in his process too. Is he does a bad idea session as well, where he just takes all the worst, terrible, horrible ideas that'll never sell, and then sometimes there's one in there, just like we did on this session today, that is like, you know what, there's actually a pretty good idea. It's not that bad, but it's a byproduct of spilling your guts and spilling it all out there.
Yeah.
So someone talking about repurposing food for whatever. I mean, I know it might sound harebrained and crazy, but if you marinate on that and come back to it maybe this afternoon, it's like, wait a second, on my walk today, that something random popped into my head. Well, it's not quite that literal idea. Maybe there is something to reusing something from the office into the real world. So I think I found great value in purging those things. And I think people hopefully should allow themselves the non-judgment in letting those ideas out and putting them to paper, putting them out there, and then going from there and saying, hey, at least that's out of my system.
It's certainly scary territory for some. I mean, there are um, sociopaths like Thoughtworse that are thinking about things like human centipede all the time and just blurting them out. But for the average person who is trying to save or maintain their job, right, their career path,
Sure.
that idea of stimulating the id and kind of letting some of that stuff out is scary. How do you do it with how do you create safe space for your team to be able to be unafraid to throw stuff out there? Because I think when you talked about the id, I mean, I think what's really interesting about that to me is there are terrible ideas, right? And I think there are so many clever people in this show that come and participate every day, and they are really clever, smart people that are kind of synthesizing things and being funny and putting weird stuff out there. There's another thing to throw something out there that is embarrassing or humiliating, reveals something about yourself that is vulnerable to others, right? And when you start to get into the real human truth behind any problem that we're trying to solve, it can forget about being funny terrible, right? It could just be like gut-wrenchingly terrible or like personally exposing terrible. Do you see your team starting to kind of burgeon into that space? And if you do, what like is that even more fertile territory for something beautiful to emerge?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, of course, there's a line with certain things when it comes to some things you write very privately, and it's good to, and there's no judgment in thinking some pretty weird shit, like we we can't control our thoughts. Like that's just the way the brain works. There's some pretty weird things that the brain tosses up, and it's obviously our actions that we take that is the thing that matters. And so I think that funny and humor, my rubric to re-steer things is usually that goes into like, for me, it's less about like it's less about societally gross things or anything like that. For me, it's stuff like, is it punching down? And is it so? A lot of the ideas that tend to come out of bad ideas sessions, it's like, for me at least, not out of the one we just had, is, oh, let's like show how X group of people is so, let's like roast that group of people, or let's whatever make fun of that guy who brings guitar, like the guitar to the party, or whatever it is. Even though they are kind of annoying that guys, but it's usually punching down rather than kind of punching up to something that's a rule at the Onion that I learned, which is a very valuable rule, is there's a lot of punching up at the powers that be, authority, system, society. Those are the things where the most hilarious comedy comes from. Is is a Kardashian joke doing anything for someone? Like, personally, I don't think so. I think that they're humans too. Like, and that's just me. Call me soft or whatever, but I personally don't find that to be very it's kind of punching down. I don't know. To me, at least, that's kind of a punching down kind of thing.
Yeah.
Versus something talking about Instagram culture and how people have. You can go that route about talking about a Kardashian or whatever, but or you could go the route of, hey, people lead Instagram lives and real lives, and they're different. That is a higher society, like cultural issue, that people seem happy online, but they're not offline. Let's kind of tap into that. And my Instagram bio is, welcome to my highly curated digital world where nothing bad happens. And it's just like a self punch at the thing of social media being used for only good things.
Yeah.
So I would say, as a rubric, like to re-steer people, first of all, creating a safe space for weird ideas is the role, hopefully, of a boss or whoever is leading the discussion and brainstorm. But secondly, and I would, for anyone who's into the comedy stuff, I would highly recommend listening to Greg Daniels, or sorry, the Office Oral History of the Office podcast that's on Spotify. It's extremely good about the creative process and how mistakes and bad ideas get used to create amazing things, and you get used to create like great moments.
That's cool. I have to check that out. You mentioned the Onion. Any interesting anecdotes? You talked about the process there. I think what's interesting about just being an outside observer, there's a lot of preciousness to the way that the Onion does things, right? I mean, like for the longest time, they don't allow outside submissions. It's a very insular kind of sort of sect of people that are kind of following a protocol and a path that has been laid before them. Is that true? And where did you see opportunities to really swing out there and kind of break convention in a place that was intended to break convention?
Yes, in the sense that I'm very grateful to have been part of a new media. Like, I was part of the in-house advertising part of the agency, which was run by Rick Hammond, who you know, and is one of like my favorite people, just as a human.
Also going to be a guest upcoming, by the way, on Imagivate.
Nice.
Yep, Rick will be joining us soon. So, yep.
Great. First of all, his blog is your ham and eggs. I'll plug his stuff, not even mine, but he was heading up the Onion's in-house kind of division for when branded content was really hot.
Yep.
And so I was lucky enough to be at the right place at the right time, where video content was something that the Onion was pursuing, and not only video content, but branded video content. The by and large thing at the Onion, the convention, was written word, written articles, and that's it. That's like this holy sacred ground. Much like the New York Times, much like other venerable institutions, the New Yorker, any of those kind of journalistic things that the Onion was parodying. And then when we were working, our charge was to bring in eyeballs and bring in people to see this kind of branded content. And we had the opportunity to do video. That was, again, going back to my thing that why I started doing this stuff from the wedding video. Video is my playground, and I had the opportunity to do some swinging in a place that wasn't traditionally doing video super hard. Everything we did had us that Rick guided us to do was video. So what I would do is sometimes, um, if anyone is out there, like in an institution that is doing the status quo, there are. I'll tell you at Potbelly, there is something that I've I've dug into, which is push notifications, right?
Mm-hmm.
So push notifications are very status quo. They are for our app for our loyalty program. When I joined, it was like, okay, we need to do a push notification to tell people, hey, you get buy one get one free or whatever it is going on. But this is like, no, you can actually have some fun in that medium. So we started using that as a, hey, you're reading this on a $1,000 phone, so you clearly have nice taste. Come check out our new premium sandwich or whatever it is. And people started resharing that and taking screen grabs of that, because this is not what push notifications are supposed to be. They're supposed to be boring. They're supposed to be whatever. And now we have people who kind of look forward to those push notifications.
That's
so
awesome.
I would encourage people to look at the status quo and see where are there little pockets, maybe unsexy pockets of 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 things that are like a push notification, and it's not super sexy. It's not going to win me an award or get me press or whatever. But if you do that, that can be an opportunity, a place to hack the system and hack it a little bit.
Um, I welcome, by the way, I welcome the folks. We've still got a really great audience hanging here with us, Hassan, as we're kind of talking about terrible ideas. We're talking about Hassan's kind of traversal through creative territories, still trying to maintain integrity and do the right thing, and how that kind of can be challenging. Sometimes it can be super rewarding, and I think I admire the way that you kind of go after that stuff. But I welcome our Imagivators to throw some questions out for Hassan as we're kind of rounding into our last little bit of this conversation. Going back to the question of notifications, I think that is really interesting. That is talk about a convention that can be broken, right? I mean, the many conventions of the way that we interact with our devices. But a notification, I think, oftentimes, if you are a UX person, and I know there are some in the stream right now, or you're a developer, or you're even just somebody who's responsible for that being created and deployed and being utilized by consumers or customers, a notification, for instance, comes with all kinds of stigma around, like, when you should or shouldn't violate someone's time, how often can you notify them of something, what's the level of priority. And I think the conventions that get built around an interactive experience like that, for instance, can be extremely rigid. I suspect that as you start to look at those things and say, hey, what are some terrible ideas that can kind of break that up, right? That's super white space opportunity, because if nobody's doing this kind of thing with notifications, and we can get in there and make something really cool nobody's seen before, it could be noteworthy, could be a cultural phenomenon, but you are potentially at risk of alienating users, maybe even like having people bail altogether. How do you balance that? And especially when you have to go sell that up, I'm assuming you have to sell that up in the organization. There's probably a lot of stakeholders when it comes to the app and stuff like that. What's the confident pitch for getting people on board to do something that disruptive?
Yeah, I think that it's just like when you're sharing things on social media, there's a ratio that I personally like to follow. So sometimes I read a very interesting quote, and I'm going to butcher who said it, but it was on LinkedIn, and it was like, sometimes the best way, sometimes the best headline to sell a horse is horse for sale. And the that's kind of a parable to the idea that if you want to sell a horse for sale is a pretty damn good way of getting people to know what you're selling. And I think there's a balance of judgment that has to happen when you want to, if you need to make a point that's very clear, for instance, promoting this very chat today. It was about a little bit of it wasn't the most quirky, clever thing. It was like, hey, do you want to start your day just clearing your mind of really bizarre ideas and see the creative process at work?
Well,
Tune in.
my post, Hassan promised $25 gift cards to Potbelly for everybody who came in. So I don't know if we didn't get a chance to kind of talk about that, but
that probably explains like the very high turnout and all the emails I've been getting. Okay, got
good
it.
luck with
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Terrible
yeah.
idea. I'm sorry. Yes. So the horse for sale approach that you took was like, hey, let's just kind of throw it out there, right?
Yeah, and that when I think there's a ratio of I forget there are different schools of thought um, on how to post on social media, like for your own personal branding. People who are doing their own personal branding who might be listening and listening in, but it's like if you post about I all the time, me, this is what happens to me all the time. I mean, I'm sure you have people in your feed who are like, you know, selfie central. That's all they put. That's all they post. Um,
Hey,
but
don't say that about this audience, you jerk. How do you know? They're all a perfectly cultured
no,
anonymous
no, no.
stream users.
I meant
Hassan.
to say your fans probably know people
They
that they're
probably know. All
following.
right, they probably know selfie
Yes,
jerks out
yes,
there.
yes.
Okay,
Selfie jerk.
thank you for
But
clarifying.
the reason I've actually unfollowed a lot of folks on Twitter is because I can't take the constant stream of just political posts. And so where I'm getting to is that I think people can Google. There's a ratio of original content, um, reposts of relevant ideas that jive with you, and then just completely objective, like industry relevant news that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So a ratio of those three intermixed, this is like 3, 2, 1. So three original ideas, two reposts of someone else who you jive with, and one something that's happening in the industry and your kind of take on it. Like, oh, Quibi or whatever, uh, some little addition that you can add your voice to what the Quibi news means to you or
Yep.
the industry. So that ratio helps not over inundate someone with just the quirky stuff or just the bizarre stuff. It helps provide a balance,
Yep.
and it allows you to have the horse for sale. Sometimes you just need to put out horse for sale.
Yeah, but that's which is part of. I mean, I think that's something we talk about a lot now. Any of us who are trying to manage brands in these complex ecosystems, right? It can't always be you're not you and you're hungry in a Betty White spot that's going to solve somebody's particular personal. That it may be that they're hungry or they not to use Snickers as an example, but that you can't it can't always be just hit them over the head with a really funny joke. At some point, you can provide some practical utility. You can provide a little bit of inspiration, then maybe a little bit of a joke, right? But you can't just do it all and pound them in the head and expect that you're going to touch everybody in the way that they need to be touched at that particular moment in time. And you really shouldn't be touching
Mm-hmm.
people anyway. We've got a couple of other terrible ideas that came through here, Hassan.
Yeah.
Shepherd, Josh, and Ujako, and a couple of other folks kind of went off on this. They were very interested in the id. What if you created a neurotransmitter that live tweets your id 24/7? Just wanted to throw that out to you because that, especially if you're if you've got that kind of psychiatry thinking in the back of your brain all the time. Support sidecar, kind of checking in with push notifications. A terrible idea for a push notification. You up? Want to smash one of these sweet club sandwiches, just in case you need
Ah,
some contributors to this to the Potbelly notification stuff.
yeah.
And then Thought Worst says, actually, Snickers for sale would cut through today. Actually, that I agree with that. Right? If especially for these kind of like CPG companies and food companies, retail companies that are just like, hey, look, what are you doing? What do you got? You got toilet paper or not? Can I buy toilet? I can buy toilet paper there. I'm coming.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I like the horse for sale sort of simplicity test. I think is great. So maybe you would also call that like Occam's razor, right? It's like sometimes the simplest solution is the
Yeah.
right solution. I don't know if that's
Yeah. And something that is really cool about social media is that, I mean, there's one thing to do it in a large enterprise business. I mean, you could probably get a small focus group of people to say, hey, I'm not. I'm usually, as a creative person, I'm usually the last to say, let's focus group this. But there's usually the one thing I love about, for instance, Twitter or platforms like platforms like Twitch, for instance, is you can do these quick polls or quick gut checks with people, and it's something that you can test out. Like that, I've seen people who are saying, "Hey, I'm rebranding my website. Which do you like better?" This as
mm-hmm.
a slogan, and people put it out there, and you have your close network of friends and fellow industry people or whoever it is chime in and say, you know what, this is actually kind of confusing. I don't know what you're all about. I don't know what you are. It's clever. It's the clever push notification, but it's not. I don't know what the horse for sale is. I don't know what the sale is. And sometimes it's like horse for sale. It's too on the nose. And I, how are you different from all the other horse sellers, horses that are on sale out there? So to use that analogy, but I think using the audience, and I go back to again like-minded people of the film club, that notion of finding the tribe. Seth Godin is a very big inspiration for me. And his notion of finding your tribe in marketing is one thing, but I think that there is a lot of value in finding your tribe in your own personal development and own personal career that you can use as a sounding board for quick mini tests. There's also something I think a lot of UX folks who are, if they're watching, they know about this, the minimum viable product, MVP, which is what is like the basic thing that we can do to stress test this. And it's the most basic things without the bells and whistles. So can I create the most basic thing? And for me, I put those things out I mock them up literally in Photoshop. I put, hey, this is a whatever. We can take one of the ideas that it's like, if we're going to start a Shopify account of fancy chairs to sell, right? You like mock it up. You don't sign up for a Shopify account or any of that stuff. You just mock it up on Photoshop and say, would you use this? And you get kind of engagement from people, and people would say, yes, this is hilarious. I want to see it right now, Yep. So you don't have to necessarily sign up, pay for this domain name, all that stuff. You can do a lot of really scrappy, minimal viable product stuff to get through mock-ups to get your idea into life.
What terrible ideas are on the horizon for you? Maybe stuff that's upcoming with Potbelly, things you're excited about, or terrible ideas that you're kind of cooking up for more Hassanism-ish kind of side projects, passion projects? Any terrible things that we should be anticipating? Well, one thing I want to make is a guitar-powered paper shredder.
So I seriously, I'm not. This isn't even a joke. I'm hunkering down for the winter. I'm in Chicago. I'm hunkering down for the winter, and that means, along with in these unprecedented times that we're in, along with the cautions of being a bit more quarantined and secluded, isolated for health reasons, I want to use this time to. Uh, Also, this isn't a suggestion that everyone needs to be productive during this time. I don't mean to imply you need to be a productive, Gary Vaynerchuk beast mode on productivity during your this time. Full no judgment, do whatever that makes you happy. But for me, I want to make a guitar powered paper shredder because I do play guitar and I have a paper shredder, and I think it would be funny to shred while you shred. And I want to try and see how that is done. I've posted that idea on LinkedIn. I posted that idea on LinkedIn, and someone actually and I said, "Does anyone know microchip robotics of how to make this happen?" And one of my LinkedIn friends connected with me and said, DM'd me and said, "Let's talk. I think I know how to make this happen." And so we might make this happen. It might be just a proof of concept that just exists. That is one idea that I'm um, totally just toying with and is very, very stupid.
I think there are actually probably a lot of folks in this stream that would definitely be down with a guitar powered shredder,
Yeah.
shredding to shred. You also might want
Shred
to
to
look into.
shred.
Have you seen? It's a little long in the tooth now, but Shreds, the music videos on YouTube where they replace the audio from like big time bands in concert, and then they just replace it with a terrible track of like really bad guitar playing, and but it's done so exceptionally well that you are caught off guard at first. You're like, oh my god, is this Hall and Oates? And it's not Hall and Oates. You should check that out. That might be an interesting partnership there as well. All right, we've got
Yeah.
people love, yeah, definitely. I knew this would happen. People loving power tool chords coming from ThoughtWorks.
Oh my gosh.
Whammy bar adds swervy cut lines. Um, just get a partnership with Cricut. Cricut. How do you say that? Cricut. Just get a partnership with Cricut for fancy
Cricket.
designs. That would actually you beyond destroying things, you could actually use this to make things. Your shredder could make things.
Yeah. The other thing that I've been thinking about is my cat. Well, a lot of these bad ideas come from just observing, and so I think that if people are looking at coming up with additional bad ideas, it's just kind of taking a second and observing patterns and trends. One thing is right behind my camera is my cat, and behind my laptop here, and she has knocked over four things off my counter while we've been talking. And so, is there something where I also am a fan of Zapier and those types of
Yeah.
when
Automation
this
tools,
happens,
right?
when the concept of it. I don't use them. I like the concept of when this happens, it's a Rube Goldberg machine of things that happens as completely unrelated or whatever. And so, is it like when your cat knocks things over, it's like instead of instead of uh, what's it called, wind power, there's like you can actually generate power from cats of the world knocking over things, and so those that's a really stupid idea, but um I think yeah, that there's the I love the idea of just observing various things and seeing, especially if it's something you already do. Like I'm sure people already have hobbies and stuff like guitar or whatever it is. You could definitely take advantage of stuff your existing behavior that you love to do and build on.
That's awesome. Hassan, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to hang with us on Imagivate. Thanks for the extended conversation. Um, one last thought. Ujako says, cat power is amazing. What could be more energy generating than passive aggressive cats knocking stuff over? I think we all agree that there's some real power in that for sure. But I really appreciate you coming in and giving us just a different perspective on terrible ideas, what it means to kind of get to the good ones from that, and keep on keeping on. You're doing really great work, and so excited to see what else comes out of Potbelly under your leadership and beyond. Thanks for hanging with us, Hassan.
Thank you, and thanks to everyone who tuned in. Keep thinking, keep moving, keep coming up with fun ideas.
Awesome, folks. We'll see you later Thursday night Thinkubator at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time today, and then we'll be back in here tomorrow for Imagivate Live 8:30 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time tomorrow. Thanks again for hanging out with us, and